What's up, Believe Nation? Welcome to another YouTube interview. Super excited to be here with a legend in the house, a true entrepreneurial marketing legend. This man has been the mentor to guys like Tony Robbins, Damon John, Stephen Covey, Brian Tracy. He has been known historically as the $9 billion man for having generated over $9 billion in revenue for the clients he's worked with. I'm sure that number is a lot higher now. And if you've ever heard of the term unique selling proposition, this is the guy who came up with it and gave it a ton of exposure. The man, the myth, the legend, Jay Abraham. Welcome aboard.
Thank you very much, and it's an honor to contribute.
Now, as people are joining in, it's a live session. I want to show you something quickly. This is a binder that I have in the green room. Jay was asking if I was familiar with his work. I'm like, yeah, man, I'm familiar with the work. When I started my first company, the real company, I was 19 years old. I'm 38 almost now. So almost 20 years. There were two resources that I loved. On the side here, if you guys can see, it says Unlimited Power by Tony Robbins.
Right.
And then on the other side, it says Jay Abraham and notes.
Oh, that's
so
funny.
In here are like pages and pages and pages. And you were like my marketing professor because I didn't have that in my family, in my life. And so I've kept that. That's almost, that binder is 20 years old. And so before getting started, just want to thank you for all your contribution, everything you've done to help entrepreneurs and my journey too.
Let me turn it around for a moment. You know me well enough by my work that what rocks my boat is not acknowledgement. It's people who do things in the marketplace and make a difference. So everything I've heard about your work is designed to move people to action. So I thank you because that's what it's all about.
I love it. I love it. So we've got a whole bunch of people joining in live, guys. As you're watching, if you have a question for Jay, put it in the chat, tag me. It's going to be a lot easier to see. But first, Jay, I'm curious. I'm curious what your mission is. I mean, you've been doing this for so long. You've helped the best of the best. You've made tons of money and you're still going strong. You're still offering tons of free resources to people. What is it that's driving you to keep doing what you're doing?
Well, it's about four integrated things, Evan. First of all, the driver in the beginning was my hopeless curiosity, and that turned out to be my strength. I basically traveled from one industry to another and discovered all kinds of different ways of thinking that were not known in other industries, and it was an extraordinary discovery for me. It was an epiphany, and now I've done about 1,000 industries, and I keep learning. And every time I learn, very honestly, because of the knowledge base that I possess, it gives me another level of exponential growth, and it's a high that you can't quite explain to people, but it's very, very powerful. Number one. Number two is I believe an entrepreneur is rewarded in life for the value and the contribution they make to others. And I think there are far too many people who dedicate a life to a business in countless hours, hopes, dreams, financial expectations, wealth creating, asset expectations, and they unintentionally and they unknowingly limit, restrict, constrain all they can do, not because they aren't working in their mind their fullest out, but because they don't know how many higher performing, easier, more profitable, more predictable, less risky, more sustainable strategies, business models, marketing approaches, access models, competitive advantages, alternative revenue approaches exist. And I have, since about, I'm older than you, obviously, since about your age, I realized that my purpose was to elevate people to be preeminent. And preeminent means you're seen as the only viable choice somebody could make in your category, your product or service. And they make that choice and they see that because of what you represent to them, whether it's greater benefit, advantage, support, protection, enrichment, whatever. And they see and you see that your organization, your rendering of the product service itself, your whole focus is on their betterment. And I don't know if that's too esoteric, But then I've been very blessed to travel the world and do it everywhere. I do it in China, do it in Japan. I'm going to Vietnam. I'm going with Tony and I every year, which gratifies me enormously just because it makes me continue to be relevant. Tony and I every year do a full day together. I think without being arrogant, I'm probably the only person that does it. And we do it together, which is hilarious, back and forth problem solving to his platinum group. I can go on and on, but I'm driven. I'm purpose driven more than money driven.
Got it. I love it.
A long answer. I apologize.
No, I like it. I like it. It's great to get more context. You've seen so many entrepreneurs, whether it's through Tony's group or just the people who are hitting you up. What are some of the biggest challenges that you see, or some of the roadblocks that you see in people's mindsets that is preventing them from actually getting to preeminence level with their goals?
Well, can I break it into parallel universes?
Let's go. I love it.
So on the one hand, they are following the herd and they're only thinking, doing, acting the way everybody else does in their industry. So plus or minus 20%, they're limited. If they do the same thing everybody else does, there's no way they're going to have breakthroughs. And breakthroughs are not just financial breakthroughs, not just product service breakthroughs, but breakthroughs in the way that they connect with their market. Secondly, the vast majority of them are tactically minded. They don't even understand what strategy really looks like. Third, most entrepreneurs are honestly two-dimensional. They think in terms of revenue less expense, and that's profit. The really astute ones are three-dimensional. The third dimensional is yield. They don't understand that certain things have an enormous yield. I started teaching 35 years ago lifetime value. LTV now is bantered around, but 30 years ago, nobody understood that if you play the game correctly, it has nothing whatsoever to do with the first transaction. It has to do with the aggregate value of the ongoing purchases that emanate from a buyer, and also the ancillary or utility revenue, which could be referrals, which could be additional complementary products or services. Most people don't know. I'm just going to go through a random litany here. You can stop me anytime. Most people don't understand. They allocate a budget, or they're indiscriminate about marketing. They'll say, 5-10% of sales, or they will say $5,000, $10,000, $100,000 a month. You're either spending too much or too little. You have to realize that different types, kinds, sources, product buyers are worth more or less. And you can't know what they're worth till you analyze, first of all, the profit they yield up front, and then the residual value that they turn into. Some are worth 5 times what you're investing, and you have to look at it as investment for a yield, not a cost. It's not an expense. It's a cost of sales, but it's an investment. I learned, Evan, and please stop me because I can go on a roll automatically. And if I don't look you in the eye, I'm not being disrespectful. I'm accessing my knowledge. So everybody, please don't think me disrespectful to Evan. I'm trying to be very respectful and just be very sinewy. I got very, very fortunately introduced to 3 different ideologies concurrently. One was I worked with people that wanted to make things better. I also worked with people that wanted to fill gaps that did not exist. Then I learned, and this was the definitive change, that you could work on the geometry of a business, and it was easier to grow a business exponentially than it is incrementally. I also realized that revenue may be important, but you can multiply by orders of magnitude the profit without having to necessarily increase the revenue accordingly. And when I learned things like the 3-way to grow a business model, the 9 drivers, the sticking point solutions, those happen to be 9, the 12 strategy pillars, and then the strategy of preeminence, and things like that, leverage marketing. I realized there were as many as 60, 70 leverage points within an existing revenue system that could be improved, each one of which 10-15% improvement sounds modest, but the cumulative effect is geometric. It's hundreds or thousands of percent multipliers in the performance of a business. And if you want, you don't have to. But my background took me to very far and interesting places. I worked, for example, for the Deming organization. Deming was the man who came to here from, he went to Japan first because he was rejected here, and he taught the Japanese car makers and electronics makers quality and process improvement, meaning making each process 10-15% better because it makes the end result hundreds of percent better. And he got the Sonys and the Toyotas to become really cool, viable sources. But he taught optimization, highest and best use theory. And most people can't optimize because they don't have a context of knowledge of how many better, higher performing, less expensive, less risky, more impactful, more profitable, more sustainable alternative means of marketing or market access exist. So the first one is most people don't optimize how they attract prospects and convert them, both targeting, proposition. Secondly, they don't set people up for a sustainable purchase, like a perpetual or at least a sustainable purchase process. Secondly, they don't try to ethically optimize the size of the sale. Third, they don't try to optimize the frequency or the utility. Fourth, they don't realize that by adding either an easier entry point or a more advanced and expensive, what I'll call an end product, you can double or triple or quadruple the profit of that business. Fourth, they don't realize that if they don't have resources, which a lot of them don't, they have an infinite capacity, an unlimited checkbook by figuring out who already has access to the same market they want to reach and is not competitive, and doing not affiliate deals, but very deep and strategically forged power partnerships, joint ventures, strategic alliances. We've done billions of dollars just with that, using other people's resources. And we've identified something like 43 main ways they can do it, and about 100 derivatives of it. One of the other things that's hilarious, Evan, if you query or canvas the majority of small, medium sized businesses and you ask them how many of you can say that 20 to 100% of your revenue comes from referral or word of mouth, a surprisingly large number will raise their hand. When I'm doing sessions with large groups, I make them stand up, and I keep them standing up. And then I go around randomly and say, well, what's the percentage and what's the dollars? And it's really quite amazing. They'll say 80%, 2 million. They'll say 40%, 500,000. You get some wild ones. 100%, 8 million. And then I'll say, well, okay, remain standing if your business has in place right now at least one formalized, systematized, continuously adhered to by everyone referral generating strategy that you use all the time. And 90% will sit down. Of the remaining 10%, I'll say two processes, 90% will sit down. Three, they all sit down. We've identified in all these categories, because I've worked for so many different businesses and looked at so many different strategic approaches, marketing approaches, tactical as well as strategy, business access approaches. We found 93 separate referral generating strategies that could be used. Now, nobody's going to use all 93, but if you think about it, Evan, a referral generated buyer, let me give you a different example. The people that get mostly referrals waste a lot of money in the outside market trying to get first tier veneer trust. Then they have to work their asses off to take that tentative trust and convert it to buying trust. Whereas a referral generated buyer is ready to buy, he or she's predisposed, they negotiate less, they buy quicker, they buy more things, they buy more often, they're more enjoyable to deal with, they refer more people, and they cost nothing. And I'm going to stop dominating. I can go on. Is this helpful?
No, it's great. I mean, guys watching, as you can tell, Jay is a wealth of information. It's why in my binder I had to take all these detailed notes. You know, he skimmed over 25 different ideas in that little rant there, and all of them have a lot more layers of detail that you can go into. I'm sure, actually, there's a great resource on Jay's website right now. It's how I found a lot of this stuff earlier on in my days, called 50 Shades, where he has over 800 hours of free resources for you guys to check out, talking about a lot of those strategies, like what are some of the 93 ways to get referrals, and it's all free and there's no sale. So we've linked up his website in the description. You can go check it out. I want to get to some of the questions, the live chat. So you guys have a question, tag me up and we can have Jay answer them quickly. Zachary saying, Jay, how do you market your personal brand better?
Well, there's a lot of ways. Let's start where I started. When I started, nobody knew me. So I would go to influencers, and influencers is a relative term, depending on where you are on the food chain. Influencers in your community, influencers in your category, influencers big. And I would offer to work for them gratis. And first of all, exchange my perspective with them so that they could validate. And if it produced a meaningful, not just a modest, a meaningful result, all I wanted in exchange was their aggressive endorsement that I could use outside. And if they were willing, and I never pushed for it, their endorsement to their affinity group. And I had to work many, many, many months at a second job while I was building this, but I had about 100 people at a time I was helping, and I scored on about 80. I'm not perfect. And I ended up getting great affinity, and I parlayed that up the food chain to where at one time we had almost 100 of the top authors in the sector all endorsing me. And then we do some wild things. We sent out letters to target audiences that had all of their signatures together, and we would call it the Declaration of Success. And it would say we rarely agree on anything, but we all agree that you have to really get to know this man. As far as this gentleman goes, what I try to do, when I started, I went up and down the corridors where I lived in Indianapolis, which does have a lot of entrepreneurs. I made lists of influential and at the time innovative entrepreneurs, and I would call on them and ask if I could interview them. And I became very good. And we've got something, I think, on that Abraham.com 50 Shades on Socratic interviewing and critical thinking. And I was able to learn by asking better questions and listening. I mean, I usurped you in that last little splurt, which is probably disrespectful, but I'm known for being, very frankly, an exquisite and deep and reflective listener. And if you listen and ask great questions and try to understand someone else's reality, and you try to understand where they're coming from, how they're coming, how they got to where they are, what their defining beliefs are, even if they don't know it, three things happen. You grow like mad. But secondly, if you ask really meaningful questions and you demonstrate that you are listening and they really believe that you're grasping it and they start talking about themselves, you get bonded to them and they like you more. And Tony Robbins would say it's one of a number of different denominations of NLP. But I spent hours and hours interviewing people, but not interviewing the way that you would interview or I would interview if it was a podcast, but just asking them about how they got there, asking them about what their beliefs are, asking them about why they thought that their success was so distinctive, asking them about some of the adversity, asking them about the mindset that they used when they had to transcend that. and having that. Now, if you have expertise, then you start asking them questions they've never asked themselves. We have, and I think it's up on that same site, 200-page self-assessment, and it's mind-blowing. It asks questions no one's ever asked you in your company, you've never thought of. It shows you correlations, implications, gaps, and it's self-evident just by the questions we ask that you don't even know how to ask yourself, that there is exceptional understanding that we possess. And we is really me, but I have a company, so I include everybody. We have an 87-question self-assessment called How Does Your Business Really Stack Up? I believe the best way to gain success is through results. It's not through rhetoric. It's not through great sales hyperbole. It's just to go out and particularly if you're an expert with underutilized time, and if that time has denominatable value, let's say that you would charge $200 an hour, and you're only doing a half a day on average now, and you have a half a day available, which is 4 times 200, you can buy somebody $800 of your time. I do not believe in giving anything free, but I do believe in contextualizing it, or semantics, however you want to say it, buying someone $800 of your time. Get deep with people who have influence. Get deep with people who you know have things to teach. Get deep with people that will allow you to get experience in different industries or environments if you can't get money. Also, I always went to organizations that had access to the markets I want. We did seminars, which you might have been introduced to when you started. I stopped 20 years ago, but we did $250 million, and I'm not saying that to be arrogant. We really did, and I did 99% of them by going to affinity groups, influencers, associations, magazines that had access to the market I wanted, which were small, medium entrepreneurs, and winning their trust through performance, and then getting them to feel comfortable endorsing us to their list, to their database, but not just endorsing us like an affiliate, but creating monster integrated collaborative programs where we would do special issues of a newsletter. We would send out, back then, recorded, whether it be a cassette or a CD, where we would actually send out pre-commitment short course primers that would make them enough money before they ever had to commit to pay for it for them. I mean, a lot of really cool things for the genre. And I don't mean to keep getting on I'm looking at you and can't tell if you're bedazzled, if you're angry, if you're shocked, or if I'm taking your thunder.
It's all good. This is you're the guest here. It's all your thunder. One of the things I want to really highlight and why I loved your material was you don't just give the strategies, you would also give the script. It's like, here, take this script. When you're calling them, say this, or in an email, write this, and swap out a couple things. But instead of just staying really high level, you would also take it massively tangible on every single level. So for someone who wants to outreach to an influencer or wants to get on those people's radars, like, what's the first step? What is the email that you send, or what's the phone call that you make? Like, take me tactical into making that first introduction.
Okay, and you're asking, one of the things that I drive people crazy with is that I don't believe in one size fits all. So if you've ever seen a woman in a one size fits all dress, one of them looks stunning and the rest either too tight, too loose, too short, too long. So I'll give you some specifics, okay? Pardon me. Depending, if you possess unique expertise, and the first thing I try to do is help people who are expert be able to quantify, contrast, compare. In other words, if you have a skill set, can you denominate what that skill set can mean to me in either higher production, cost saving, more clients, buyers, annual revenue, any denomination that makes my intangible analogized to tangible. Once I can do that, and I don't like people who estimate. I think conservatism is very important because you'll never disappoint yourself or the other side. You'll always, if you're really good, over deliver. But I would basically say one approach is to say that I possess an expertise. There are other people out there, certainly, and I know many of them. And this is what we always do to try to, we call it dividing and conquering too. When I work with an expert, I know most of them. They're, for the most part, they're quality men and women, good husbands and fathers. They do good work, but their approach to what I do is so different than mine. I play a much more elevated game of, and then you fill in the blank, quantification, result-based delivery, looking at, at impact, whatever it is. And you can say, I would like to buy you or your, if there's an expert or a decision maker under the head of the business, I'd like to buy your plant manager or your operations manager or your HR.